The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
You know, I didn't even ask, but maybe I should have. Adrian, you wanna just run this one?
No.
No. Okay. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Fantasy NBA Today. It's Tuesday. Dan Besbris, Adrian Benjamins. Each of us attempting to pass the load over the other one. How you been, my man? It's good to talk to you on Tuesdays again. This feels more right.
Yes, I'm doing good, Dan. Just trying to get through this lull. It's at first it didn't bother me too much. Was just trying to take advantage of the downtime because I know this season is going to be insane. So it was really just trying to soak in the quiet, slow time. But now, Dan, it's starting to get to me. I'm ready for the season to start now.
Yeah, come on. What do we have to do here, NBA? So I'm thankful. This is like my early thanks. It's the Jewish New Year, so it's not like a Thanksgiving or anything. But I suppose I could say I was thankful on yesterday's podcast that there was a little bit of NBA news over the weekend with Luol Deng going to Minnesota. What?
Man, Dan, what is Tibbs just bringing in every ex-Chicago Bulls to that team? Jimmy Butler, Luol Deng. Who else is on that team? There's more Chicago Bulls on that team.
Taj Gibson.
Taj Gibson.
Did you see Bobby Portis actually tweeted Joakim Noah to the Wolves, called it. He's all over it. Even the NBA guys think this is ridiculous.
I would not be surprised, man. It is getting really crazy. It's insane.
What do you think about Devin Booker's thing? Because I spent a lot of time on yesterday's show talking about how, I don't even want to give you my take on it. I want yours organic before I even say anything. What do you do with a guy who's going to miss more than likely at least the first week of the season due to sort of an unspecified hand injury and a surgery? I mean, this is a big deal.
Dan, so Devin Booker, for me, is just not a guy that I usually target. Going around the early 20 range in Yahoo mock drafts. And, at that point in the draft, I'm just not looking for him. So not a guy I usually end up with. And this just kind of turns me off of him a little bit more. Now, from what I'm hearing, he should be ready towards the start of the season. So if you are a Devin Booker guy, I wouldn't knock him down your ranking too far or anything like that. I think he's going to be just fine. But not a guy I look for at his average draft position right now.
Yeah, he's going around, looked like 24. Is that what you got on your list as well?
Yes.
Yeah, that's too. Yeah, I mean, even before the hand injury, that was a little bit early for my taste, just because it seemed like, and you know me, I'm a 9-cat guy. I think you do a little more 8-cat than I do, or a little of both, probably, because you're like maximum degenerate over there. But I mean, that's really early for a guy who was averaging near 4 turnovers a game last year. That's really early.
This is a guy in 8-cat leagues finished around the 60 range for the season. So to be drafting him right there, I just never, ever look for him. Like by the time I'd be willing to consider him, which is like around maybe end of round 4, round 5, he's always gone.
Yep, completely agree. Dude, I think you probably agree with me on it. Isn't it just the power of the point? If you score a bucket, you're just a little bit more attractive than the next guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Points are so overvalued. It's people value it more than any other stat, but in actuality, it's really maybe one of the easiest stats for fantasy to get. So guy scores a lot of points. It's what you see. It's the main highlight. And so because of that, it gets really overvalued. Now, I do believe that Devin Booker one day will be, he'll kind of add more to his game. I do think that is possible. And, very young guy still. But as of right now, not a guy that I look for.
No, I'm with you on that one. So you and I actually do basically agree on this thing. He wasn't really a guy we were targeting anyway, even with the possibility of kind of taking a step forward. I think there's a hope that he does that. In 9-cap, by the way, on a per-game basis, he was number 48, but he only played 54 games, so obviously he takes a bit of a hit there as well. What you do get out of Devin Booker, we talked about points. He averaged 25 points a game last year, which is pretty darn solid. 2.7 3-pointers, also a good number. 6 free throws per game at 88% clip, so he's a really nice positive in that one. And about 4.7 assists last year, which was also above average. But the thing that jumped out to me is under 1 steal per game. His per 36s on that are about 1 steal per 36, which is pretty low. And 3.6 turnovers. He's just not, at this stage in his career at least, he's not that great of a passing guard. He's a scoring guard. Like he's awesome at scoring the basketball. It drives me crazy because he looks like the villain in every high school coming of age movie, and he's just like draining buckets on like the little nerd kid who's trying to figure out himself, and there's Devin Booker just raining in hoops on him. But the other parts of his game to me are still a bit lacking. And with this injury news, Adrian, it sounds to me like it doesn't really change things that much for you. But as I said on yesterday's show, and I don't want to spend too much time on it again today, I hate drafting guys that are injured coming into opening night. There are just so many things that can go wrong in that scenario.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Usually you like a guy to have a really strong training camp, a really solid preseason. You want them to be on the ground running for the start of the season just to get a flying start. But, Devin Booker, we know that this Suns organization very high on him. They consider him maybe the main cornerstone of that franchise. So that his role is safe. I'm kind of giving him a little bit of a pass. From what I'm hearing on a 6-week timetable, that would put him just about ready for the start of the season. So, the other thing too, with a hand injury, he can still run. He can still work out. He just won't be doing a lot of stuff that you need to do with your hand, obviously, like shoot and stuff like that. But he can generally still stay in really good shape, hopefully.
Yeah, there is that part of it where, he doesn't lose the conditioning factor. And he's so young still, too, that even if he did, it would come around pretty quickly. I just, a guy that relies on the jump shot that much, it is nerve-wracking at the very least. He is at Adrian Benjamins, by the way. If you want to give him a follow on Twitter, I am at Dan Besbris. Please do give Hoopball a follow at Hoopball Fantasy. And as we're doing every day here, as we lead up to, at least October 1st, we're promoting the Hoopball Draft Guide, the most intensive draft guide for NBA fantasy players on the internet. It is jam-packed with over 300 player profiles. The Brewski 150 gets added on October 1st, and it is just $13.99 right now. Go get it. Hoop-ball.com. Get the draft guide. Tell him Dan sent you, and it won't change anything. You'll still get the draft guide, and it'll still be awesome. I am waiting for Panda's first ADP report. I've said it a million times. That is the only thing I need, because I know the people in my league, and if you know what the people in your league are reading, and you know where guys are actually getting drafted, you can make those little adjustments, and you can, Adrian, predict the future. You can pretty much get everybody you want in that scenario. You know where everybody's going. The game gets too easy, but also when you're winning money, too easy is kind of a good thing. What's your favorite part of draft guides, by the way? What's your go-to? Is it player profiles? Is it the B150? I know that's a popular one.
Yeah, huge fan of the B150. Want to see if Brewski is, his rankings are so aggressive, and I want to see if he's as high on the buzzy guys as I am. And I
know what name you've got in your head, Adrian. I know
I'm not going to name any names here, and I don't want to give anything away as far as what Brewski's, what his favorite guys are this season, anything like that. But I just love, it's just kind of a way to kind of verify, like, is he thinking what I'm thinking? Am I off compared to him on certain guys? I love just comparing how I feel on guys with how he feels on guys. I love just the general rankings in general. I love just the columns, finding out on more sleepers and stuff. I just love it all, man.
I know, you're so jazzed up. I like that tweet that we got today talking about your energy on the podcast. I forget who sent that out, but it was so accurate, man. Listening to you get hyped about basketball, it wakes me up. So that I think like the first 2 minutes of all of our podcasts, I'm kind of, the expression I believe is dragging ass, and I'm going to leave that in here because that's PG-13 nowadays. But Adrian's got us amped, and Brewski's got us amped, and basketball has us amped. So that's all coming up. It's $13.99 at hoop-ball.com. Make sure you check that thing out. Yes, what Adrian says is true. Brewski is very aggressive in the B150. And what I commented on yesterday's pod, and I don't want to spend too much more time on promo because we got a lot of real things to cover today, is all those aggressive things, all the stuff that you look at and you're like, what? Come on. By the end of the season, you look back at it and you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And now it's all just normal. Like last year, Joe Ingles was probably the one that drew the most attention. Smoking Joe, we've called him here at Hoop Ball. We talked about him, by the way, all the previous season. So those that were paying attention probably could have picked up on that. But, he was a guy that was pre-ranked last year at like 130-something. And Brew had him at top 50. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? And then, ta-da, Smoking Joe. And now everybody's got him right around that 50, 60 mark. Just, a year later than Brew. So you guys are going to enjoy it. I've had a sneak peek. Obviously, Brew and I text all the time because we're like a married couple here at Hoop Ball. And I know what he's thinking on a lot of guys, and it's going to be great. So we're talking about some stuff today, Adrian. We got a few things. We got Dynasty. We got continued exploration of the inner workings of Adrian's brain when it comes to Dynasty sports. And then we've also got a little bit of a debate on our hand, and his name is D'Angelo Russell. We're going to save that to the end of the podcast. So, Adrian, Dynasty League, the Hoop Ball Dynasty League. The madness continues. Any weird trades gone down over the last week, or are we settling in a little bit here?
No, we're pretty much settling in. It's been really quiet on the trade front. I think the biggest trade we had, which was a few weeks ago, was Drew Holiday for Chris Middleton, which pretty even deal. I thought it was a pretty great trade on both sides. So it was a really solid deal.
Yep, that is it. I like those guys. I think it's solid basketball players. Okay, so with that in the bucket, I guess, last week we left off at round 5. I want to go through some of the picks you guys made. This is, of course, a first-year Dynasty draft. We're not going to go all the way to the end because those players in round 15 are hot garbage. But we will go at least a round or two further here. And I also want to, as we work our way through this round 5, Adrian, I want to pick your brain a little bit on how you game plan for the future, not just for your own team, because your team is fairly predictable right now. You have a team, for those that are kind of catching up with us, through the first 4 rounds, Adrian, who's on your Dynasty team right now? Just the first 4.
I had a very late pick in this draft. And so, I kind of decided even before the draft started, if I can't get a great win now guy, I'm just going to go super young, try to have a team that's going to be a contender maybe 4 years from now. So I went mega young, Dan. I ended up with Luka Doncic in round 1, Jaren Jackson Jr. in round 2. Round 3, I went Mo Bamba. At this point, I got a team full of teenagers at this point, right? Round 4, I was able to make a trade to get Kevin Knox, another super young prospect that kind of fits the mold of the rest of the guys that I've been drafting. And so that was kind of my team at this point.
Okay. Another team that I'd like to bring up with you is the team Pippen Ain't Easy. We've talked about them on a couple of our Dynasty discussions because their first round pick, which was a couple spots after yours, was Kyrie Irving. They got him at 23. Round 2, pick 28, they took Chris Middleton. It sounds like he's been flipped for Drew Holiday since then, but still, either way, you've got it sort of an established guy. Round 3, which was a third round reversal in this league, that was pick 50. They took Boogie. And in round 4, towards the end of round 4 now, since it's back to normal snake draft, they traded up and got Marc Gasol at 75. So that now is a team that's built almost in the opposite mold of your own, Adrian. This is a team with 4 proven veterans: Kyrie Irving, Drew Holiday, Boogie coming off a serious injury, and Marc Gasol. That's a team that's going for it right now, I take it?
Yes, absolutely. And, I would say my team's on one end of the spectrum. This team is probably on the complete end of the other spectrum. As far as me, just complete future team, this is the definition of win now team right here.
Okay, so I have a question about how these types of teams evolve before we even get into the round 5 discussion. Your team, going forward, you're mostly playing the waiting game. So what do you do with your team during the course of this upcoming fantasy season? Are you hunting for some G leaguer that pops up on the wire? Like, how do you, for me, when I've got my handful of money leagues that I'm just laser focused on all the time, and I'm constantly wheeling the last 2 roster spots to see if I can turn up the next gem. But, in a 12-team non-dynasty redraft league, it's not that hard to find guys on the waiver wire. They pop up 1 or 2 every month, probably. You've got really interesting guys, maybe more than that. So, I know what I'm doing on a night-to-night basis. I'm watching these fringe fantasy guys. I've talked about it on this pod a million times. I do the homework for tonight. Hey, your homework is watch Bulls Cavs and see what Rodney Hood does or something like that. And then you come back the next day and you're like, okay, is this guy worth picking up? Those guys are all gone in your Dynasty League already. So what do you do on a night-to-night basis if you're a team that's looking at winning in the year 2021?
Well, you need to be very patient if you're going my route because, you're not going to win anything right now. And I don't even want to win anything right now. And I hate to admit this, Dan, but I may even tank a little bit. Meaning I may not be setting my optimal lineups during the season because I want the highest chance at a top lottery ball in 2019. But now, Dan, think about this. I'm going to do an entire season without even really trying to win. It's very difficult to grab a hot free agent in this league. Dan, we're rostering guys like Dwayne Bacon, Shelvin Mack is owned in this league. So, it's really rare to be able to grab a hot free agent because most likely those guys are already owned in this league. So I'm really planning on building in the draft and not really planning on competing at all. And, as I said, you got to really be patient to be willing to do that for a year or 2.
Listen, I heard a lot of really interesting stuff in there, but I'm pretty sure I heard the word bacon. Are you cooking something?
Really interesting. Last year, I think it was the Hornets. They had Dwayne Bacon, Jeremy Lamb. They had the all food team, and I thought it was awesome.
That is actually outstanding. I bet there's other guys out there that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. Hey, listeners, have some fun with us on this one. Let us know if you can think of some other NBA players, past or present, that would make for an outstanding omelet bar. We'll have a little fun with that on Twitter, at Adrian Benjamins, at Dan Besbris. Okay, so now the other side of the coin, Adrian, you really are fairly stuck. You don't want to make too many moves. You want to see if your young guys pan out. Are there guys at the very end of your own bench? Well, sorry, I do have a follow-up question before I go to the other side of this same coin. Are there guys at the very end of your bench that you think you're probably going to cast off into the ocean in favor of, somebody that gets called up from the G League or, some player that comes out of nowhere this year? Is that still a possibility, or are you really just sort of sitting back and waiting until the fourth quarter to put in your worst players?
Yeah, I've got some young guys who I'm just going to likely miss on. That it's a real crapshoot on whether some of my guys are going to pan out. So for those guys, I might be replacing for my hopeful, elite prospect that I'm getting in the draft. But I'll be honest with you, Dan, the one thing that I will be doing is I am very invested and intrigued on the development of these young guys that I have. So, I've got some guys I don't know if they're going to start. Like, let's say, for example, Mo Bamba. Right now, he's kind of projected to come off the bench behind Vucevic. But I'm really excited to see the 10, 15 minutes he's in the game. This is a guy who I think is going to lead my team one day, who's going to be an elite big man one day. So it makes some of these games really fun, Dan, to see your young guys. Even if they only get in for 10, 15 minutes, you want to know, my shot that I'm taking on this guy. How's it looking?
Hail Mary. No, I mean, you do have some really interesting guys early in your draft, so that's good to know. Okay, other side of this coin. By the way, to the listeners out there, I legitimately don't know the answer to these questions I'm asking. So I'm doing my best over here to ask the questions that I think everybody would want to know the answer to as they settle into their own Dynasty leagues. The more I hear, by the way, about Dynasty formats, the less I want to be a part of it because I value my personal time, and unless you're doing... Like Adrian, he's not costing himself any personal time for the next 3 years, but then things are going to get real for you. What about the teams where sort of, bleep is getting real right now? The team we just talked about, Pippen ain't easy, loaded up with veterans here early in the draft, and we haven't gotten to the later stages, but one would presume that they likely built most of their team out to win this season. I assume they treat this year like most of us treat a redraft year. Is that... Have you been in that position before, Adrian, where you're in kind of a win-now mode in Dynasty? Is it much more similar to a traditional NBA or fantasy NBA season?
Yes, absolutely. These teams, number one, these teams have a completely different mindset than me, right? These teams are worried about playoff schedule. These teams are worried, how's my team build now, like at the end of the draft, right? Like, what categories do I need that I'm just so short on I should punt? What categories am I, really close to still where maybe I should make a trade because I'm so good in this one category, but I'm still on the fence? And so these teams have a completely different mindset than me. And, what some of these teams are trying to do, I've talked to a couple managers on some of these teams. They're trying to trade for guys like, let's say maybe a DJ Augustine, right? He doesn't have really strong dynasty value as far as future. But for this season, a guy who you might be able to get pretty easily, who could have some pretty strong value just for this season, right? Starting point guard for the Orlando Magic. We've seen him put up some solid stats given the right role, given the right minutes. So they're kind of going after these guys that might be really easy to get, who can really, help. This is such a deep league, Dan. 24 teams. You get a guy like that, and if he pans out, could really make a difference in a deep league like this, and might not be very difficult to get. So these teams, Dan, are in a completely different mindset here.
That's really interesting. You don't think about that type of player like a DJ Augustine who really doesn't have any future value. This is a guy who is going to be handling the point guard duties and mostly just kind of handing the basketball to other players on the Magic, but as kind of a late round type of guy in a really deep league. That's the other side of this equation. This is a 24 team dynasty league. So it does seem like a guy like that has 1 year potential. That in my mind, Adrian, I'm picturing this almost like a trade deadline kind of deal. Like he's a 1 year rental type of player, and you don't even care what happens with him down the line. So what happens to a player like that if this team that's trying to win now, if they acquire him, are they stuck with him for next year? How does can they dump him at the season's end? How does that process work?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much going to use this guy for as long as you can get value out of him. So, obviously, if you're trying to win right now, you're going to also be trying to win next year. So a guy like that, as long as he still has some value for next year, you'll hang on to him. And just like any league, you look at your worst guy, and can this guy provide you better value than your worst guy? If so, you're hanging on to him. If not, you may look on the wire to see if there's anything available. Dan, there's still some interesting, I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit because earlier I talked about how there's nothing good on the wire. But there are some guys that, let me give you an example. Maybe a guy like J.R. Smith, who might be floating on the wire because people aren't sure, like, is this guy going to give me immediate value for this upcoming season? We might not know, but someone like that giving a starting role with the right usage could be very valuable for a team trying to win right now.
So, okay, let me see if I'm getting this other part right. I have a lot of questions when it comes to particularly the teams that are trying to win now. At what point then does a win now team hit the reset button? Like, how do they know when? I guess there is no perfect answer to that question, right? And what's to stop a team like that from being kind of a jerk team and just like trying to sell their dynasty team off to somebody else? I just, in my mind, I'm pessimistic on human nature, I guess, but it seems like teams that are trying to win now, they might just try to win as long as humanly possible and then give up. And that seems kind of crummy.
Yeah, you're really just trying to win for as long as you can. But if your window is now, you got to go for it now. And, that's where it's really interesting, Dan, because I've seen some win now teams make moves that have kind of extended their life expectancy for another season or two. Like, I've seen a guy flip maybe a top 30 guy for like 2 young prospects that also kind of help you win now. And now it's kind of like, whoa, this guy just extended his window a little bit. But Dan, to touch on what I was telling you earlier, I use J.R. Smith as an example. He's on the wire right now in this league. Jamal Crawford is available on this league. Now, a guy like Mario Chalmers and Tony Snell, they're not highly coveted guys, obviously, or they wouldn't be on the wire, but you never know if any of these guys end up in the right situation. Maybe due to injury, they end up getting a good role on a team. They can help a win now team.
That's an interesting, okay. This is, I hope everybody's following along with my weird line of questioning over here. So you mentioned a team that's maybe getting towards the end of its win now window, trading away one of its better play. It seems like a team like that, Adrian, would have to trade away a player that's closer to his prime to get 2 young guys, because if you got a guy at the end of his career, I can't imagine anybody's going to want that guy.
So I'm talking about trading a guy. Let's say you flip James Harden, who is maybe one of the best win now guys you can possibly have, for 2 guys like, let's say, Aaron Gordon and I'm trying to think of another guy like around that same range. You can even say Devin Booker. Range. Right. Exactly. Let's say a Devin Booker or an Aaron Gordon. Devin Booker and Aaron Gordon still help you win now. We're still looking at those guys to provide some pretty solid value in redraft leagues. And now those guys are in their, Devin Booker's in his early 20s. I believe Aaron Gordon's around that 24 range. I mean, those are guys who can also, help you win into the future. So it's being in that win now mode. You walk a really fine line between going for it right now, but also you want to win for as long as you can, because once your window passes, you're in really deep trouble right there, because you're starting over from ground zero pretty much, like once your window ends, and that is a long rebuild right there.
Yeah, you really have to be proactive. In the example that you created, James Harden for Devin Booker and Aaron Gordon, you're giving up a guy who is providing better production that season. I mean, you could even take last year or this coming year, for example. I mean, James Harden is going to be worth way more in a redraft league, at least, than Devin Booker and Aaron Gordon put together. Way, way more. Like, it's not even remotely close to a fair trade, but what you've created, Adrian, in this scenario is a team that's saying, listen, I have James Harden, but I don't think I'm going to be able to win this year. I got to get some younger guys. I got to extend my window. I got to get some youth in this thing, and basically pulling the plug a little bit earlier on a win now situation. Maybe you create like 1 season of downtime, but you shorten the rebuild, as opposed to potentially holding on to James Harden, continuing that, really trying to win now. And if you really stretch that thing back to the very last minute, then it does seem like the rebuild would be a lot longer. How do you even rebuild in that scenario? I can't even fathom. If your players just start to get bad and nobody wants them, you're just rebuilding through first-year player drafts? That sounds almost impossible.
Well, so to give you an example, Dan, I'm in one of my other leagues, and this is a 30-team league. So this is deeper even than Hoopball Dynasty League 2. I originally drafted, and this league's been around, I think we're going on year 4. I originally tried to build a win now team. And I just missed it. I think I ended up finishing, in the top 10 those years, but then my window passed. Some of my guys who were win now guys ended up getting hurt. I tried to make one of these moves to extend my window. I'm going to give you an example of what I did.
Yeah, please.
I traded Porzingis for Skal Labissiere, Karis LeVert, and Nerlens Noel.
Oh my God.
Now keep in mind, I did this 2 years ago when Nerlens Noel very first got traded to Dallas, and it looked like he was going to be the starting center in Dallas. It looked like Karis LeVert could be the starting wing in the Nets. When I made this deal, it looked like Skal could possibly become the starting power forward in Sacramento. So when I made this deal, I thought, okay, I'm getting 3 young guys who I believe eventually are going to be starters on their teams. Now, it definitely didn't work out for me at all. Nerlens Noel, man, really fell off. The Kings now super crowded up front. They have so many guys. I doubt Skal will start. Karis LeVert's still a guy that I love. Not quite sure yet what his role is going to be on the Nets this year, but it's just an example of me flipping a guy, trying to really hit on 3 lottery tickets that could put me back into the mix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is super interesting stuff. Okay, we're going to do more of this in coming shows. We probably chopped into our round 5 discussion there a lot, but I honestly think it's worth it because I feel like what people did in round 5 of the Dynasty Draft is less important than what people are doing moving forward. So Adrian, we're going to whip through round 5 here. We're going to go 6 picks at a time. That way we've just got 4 quick chunks, and then we're going to get into a brief D'Angelo Russell discussion. So here's the first 6 picks of round 5. Enes Kanter, Zach LaVine, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Paul Millsap, Joe Ingles, and Brook Lopez. Those are picks 97 through 102. Adrian, your thoughts on those?
Man, every single one of these guys, home run, solid pick. I mean, Dan, we're talking about overall pick 97 to 102. All of these guys win now guys that can help you. Some of these guys still very young. Zach LaVine, 23. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, 23. And then you got a mixture of some older guys like Joe Ingles, who's 30. Brook Lopez, 30. Paul Millsap, 33. But I love all of these picks, Dan.
Well, you got a pick in the next chunk of 6. Buddy Hield goes at 103. Okobo, one of the 2 point guards in Phoenix. That's your guy at 104. Kuz at 105. Lou Williams at 106. Bam Adebayo at 107. And Derek Favors is 108. Kind of a mixture of young and old here.
Yeah, again, really love these picks. Buddy Hield, 24. Kyle Kuzma, 23. Bam Adebayo, 21. So really nice injection of youth here. The only pick I'm a little on the fence about is maybe Lou Williams, a guy I really loved what he did last season. Finished as a 17th player in 8 category leagues. Was a real surprise. Now, 31 years old, and the Clippers this year are mega crowded in their backcourt. So a guy I'm kind of avoiding this year in redraft leagues, although I do love his game, and I do think he is a great fantasy player. So I think maybe I would have gone a different route there, but really love these picks. Real quick, I want to talk about Okobo. I was really excited to get him. 20 years old, really good European point guard. I think he's going to eventually be a starting point guard in this league. I don't know if he'll be an all-star or an elite talent one day, but I think he's going to be a really solid point guard, starting point guard in this league. Had some huge games in Europe. He had a 40-point game in Europe last year. I'm really excited about this kid.
I have a weird sneaking suspicion that Team King's Ransom, the club that took Lou Williams, is a Clippers fan, because just in a brief glance around this draft, they also took Gilgeous Alexander, Tobias Harris, and Montrezl Harrell. They have 4 Clippers on their roster. So there was a little something else at work, I think, in that chunk. Although they did have another pick later in this same round, so we'll move to this third chunk of 6. That's Willie Cauley-Stein at 109, Mike Conley at 110, Evan Fournier at 111, Nick Batum 112, Slow-Mo 113, Mario Hezonja at 114, and I believe that's 6, right? Did I do 6 there? I think I did.
Yeah.
Lost track.
Another great group of guys here. This is, usually right here in Dynasty Leagues, it gets really off the rails and gets crazy. These are all very solid picks here, Dan. Willie Cauley-Stein, kind of let me down a little bit last year. Finished as player 121 in 8 cat leagues, but only 25 years old. I still wonder if he can improve and get better. Also, I talked about earlier how the Kings really crowded up front, so not quite sure yet exactly what his role is going to be, but I do like Willie Cauley-Stein. Evan Fournier, only 25. Kyle Anderson, Slow-Mo, only 24. Hezonja, 23. I'm loving these guys for redraft leagues. I'm really high on these guys. I think these were really great picks here. Mike Conley, Dan, the last 2 years I invested heavily on him and let me down 2 years in a row. So I have kind of a personal bias against him. But if you're winning, if you're going for it right now, solid point guard, 30 years old. So, still potentially could have 3 or 4 years ahead of him here.
Yep,
so
that's a roll of the dice, certainly, but a guy with top 40 upside getting at 110 there if he can actually stay on the floor. Last 6 picks of round 5 before we have a little D'Angelo fight on this broadcast. Michael Bridges at 115, Sheedy Osman at 116, Karis LeVert, we talked about him just a moment ago, at 117, Miles Bridges at 118, Isaiah Thomas, Little IT at 119, and Lure Nance Jr. at 120 rounds out round 5. It actually seems like the quality of player petered out there around 115. Like it became a little bit harder to find those either proven vets or young guys with very clear minutes. This is a group of guys where the minutes are maybe a little bit less clear.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll see it next week when we go over the next round. It's like a full round of unclear question marks. And yeah, this part of the round where it got a little bit fuzzy here. The team that took Mikal Bridges 6 beers deep, doing the same build as me. He and I went that ultra young route. He and I are going to be like arch rivals in this league in 3 to 4 years from now. Miles Bridges, I think I'm not too sure on him. Question mark, but I do love some of the young guys that went here. Cedi Osman, I'm taking late in even my redraft leagues. I'm really high on him. Karis LeVert, another young guy, do it all, stuff and things type of guy. Larry Nance Jr., a guy I think he's got some pretty high potential. Really hoping he gets increased usage and minutes on this Cavs team now that they don't have LeBron. I'm hoping he can really fill in there. So really like some of these picks here, Dan.
Yeah, that 6 beers deep team, by the way, a bunch of players on it with names I can't pronounce because they haven't played in the NBA yet. Donovan Mitchell, their first round pick. So that had to cut deep for you. Hi, Adrian. I know.
That was really tough. And
I was actually 6, so it wasn't that close. Right.
When we were doing the drawing, I was like, okay, if I maybe land pick 9, pick 10, Donovan Mitchell can fall to me here. Nope. 6 beers deep. Brett took Donovan Mitchell pick 5 overall of this thing, Dan.
Yep. He crushed you. That was
tough.
This is someone who's as high on him as you are, honestly. I mean, it does seem like he has a pretty long career of him, so we'll certainly give you that. Okay, guys, this is the part you've been sitting tight and waiting for. It is the time on the broadcast where Adrian and I... What's the old tagline for the real world? That show doesn't exist anymore, right?
I am old enough to remember the very first season of Real World, but I still can't remember what that tagline is.
Something about stop doing something and start getting real. I should have looked it up before the pod. Anyway, you guys know what I'm going for, and for you youngins, go look it up. We've been watching these TV shows since 1995. Adrian and I are going to get real here because Adrian likes D'Angelo Russell, and I don't. And that's really what it ultimately comes down to. Our friendship is on the line, and I want like a legitimate discussion here because there are two sides to these coins. There are guys in the NBA that are terrible decision makers that have actually posted fantasy value in the past, but I just can't stand them, Adrian. So I'm going to go first because I think I don't want to put you on the spot before my own situation here. D'Angelo Russell. Kind of a fantasy bust to this point. He's played 3 years in the NBA. He managed to play all 80 games not all, but most of the season, I should say. 80 out of the 82 games, his rookie campaign with the Lakers. Second season with LA, just 63 games. Last year with Brooklyn, just 48. That's an arrow that's on the way down. He's averaged 15.5 points each of the last 2 years in the NBA on 40.5 and then 41.5 shooting from the field. He's a 75% career free throw shooter, which is not good, an assist-to-turnover ratio of 4.3 to 2.7. He keeps getting opportunities, and he keeps crapping on them. It looks like Spencer Dinwiddie is a better point guard for that Nets team, but at the same time, it does seem like they have to give him a shot because they gave up a lot to get him, and when you sort of build a narrative around trading for a former number 2 pick, you like to try to see what he's got, but my issue, Adrian, is he's just not a good decision maker. And at some point, the Nets are going to pull the plug. So I can't trust him. He's a 9-category disaster because his percentages suck. His turnovers stink. And unless he can get his scoring up to like 20 points a game, then at least he could be a popcorn guy. He's a mess, man. He only got 0.8 steals per game last year, and that was something he was pretty good at with the Lakers. I don't get it. I don't understand why you're still high on this dude. I can't handle it.
So, Dan, here we go. D'Angelo Russell time. Look, D'Angelo Russell really let us down. The turnovers and the field goal percentage is a real concern. But here's the thing, Dan. This guy was putting up around 50 range value before he got hurt last year. I really love the offense and the system that he's in. I think he's got a perfect fit here with the Nets. And Dan, let's not forget, he's 22 years old. I feel like people give up too quickly on young point guards. The point guard position is the most difficult position in the league. It takes years for guys to figure this out. Look at guys like Jeff Teague, Steph Curry. Look at their numbers now compared to the first couple years of when they were in the league. It's completely different. Now, I'm hearing some great things about this guy in the offseason. Coach Atkinson says he thinks he's maturing, learning. He's getting a lot of praise that he's working out. He looks really good. I'm hearing, that he's been the first one in the gym. He looks more explosive. So I am thinking he's going to improve. And Dan, he's currently being drafted in the 7th round. I think it's possible he could finish somewhere in the 50 range. So I am all in on D'Angelo Russell this year, especially at his average draft price of round 7. I'm willing to take a shot on him there. I don't want to reach on him. He's not a guy that I'll draft anywhere before that, but as long as he's available at that time, I'll take a shot on him. Dan, I just still think we haven't seen the best of him. There are some real concerns there. Injury-wise, he's been hurt a lot so far in his brief career. All of the stat things that you've talked about, there is definitely some concern there.
Okay, I hear you on that. When you talk about the 7th round, are you talking 8 cat or 9?
I'm talking about 9 category, which definitely hurts him more because he's a 3 turnover a game guy. But, one of the things that Coach Atkinson's been talking about is that he has seen some improvement in him in his decision making. He says, this is a direct quote, I think he's maturing and learning. And Dan, that sounds right. I mean, he came into this league, I believe, as a 19-year-old kid. This is a very, very tough position and a really hard league. It takes time. The speed of the game needs to slow down for these guys. And I'm really hoping we see that leap from D'Angelo Russell this year. Now, I will admit, Dan, this is do or die for D'Angelo Russell this year. If he lets me down this year, he'll probably be on my do not draft list. Dan, I said this about another guy last year. His name was Victor Oladipo.
Okay, that's true. But with Victor Oladipo, just to keep this discussion going, you could put a lot of his issues on Scott Skiles and then Russell Westbrook. There were factors that were sort of beyond his control, where with D'Angelo Russell, he's been given a lot of leash to this point, and he's mostly just run straight into the street with it. You make good points. Guys change in their career, but Jeff Teague, you mentioned as a guy who, he shot 40% his first year. He shot 44% his second year. By his third year in the league, he shot 47.5%. He had figured it out by then. Steph Curry, percentages, 46 his freshman year, which was, like most of these guys, pretty close to the career low. But, by his second, third year, he was at 48, 49% from the field. Jeff Teague did improve in free throw season, so I suppose there's a possibility that maybe D'Angelo Russell can start to put that together. The thing that terrifies me about D'Angelo Russell is that we've seen really no indication that the percentages are going anywhere positive. So even if he does bring the turnovers down a little bit, even if his scoring comes up a little bit, even if the decision-making improves a little bit, if you're shooting a high-volume 41% from the field and you're a guard that can't make a free throw, you got no place on my team. I can't do it. It's like drafting big guys that can't shoot from the field. You have to find other guys to sort of make up for them, and I just hate to have those dudes on my basketball team. Plus, you really can't trust the health stuff. It does seem like that knee, without any, try not to make it personal here because of the way he stunk it up for the Lakers. If you got knee problems this early in your career, it just, it makes me think of guys like Brandon Roy, who ended up with like degenerative arthritis going on in the knee. I'm not a doctor, and I don't think necessarily that Russell stuff is going there, but his knee things they're troubling. Guys that turn an ankle all the time, they sort of figure out ways to get around that. Guys that have had a stress reaction, they've been able to figure out how to do it. So maybe I should be more optimistic, but knees, Adrian, that's everything in basketball. Every move they make, you got to put pressure on his bad knees. It's too early for him to be hobbling around like a geriatric.
Well, so, when I tend to buy into players like this, when I'm willing to take a risk on players like this, it really all needs to come together. And what I'm talking about is we're hearing great things about his offseason. We're hearing that he's made a real commitment to his body this summer, that he's eating right, he's working out. I'm hoping that helps with some of the injury problems he's had. Again, it's being in the perfect fit. He's on the right team. The Nets have a very, very fast-paced, friendly offense for fantasy. I'm not questioning his role. I think it's great. And also, 22 years old, I feel like, his trajectory can still go up. So, if we were talking about a player who's 26, 27, who's in a really slow-paced offense, whose off season that we're hearing, he gained weight. For example, look at, we saw a really crazy picture of John Wall when he reported to Summer League, right? If we saw a picture like that of D'Angelo Russell, I would not be buying in. But so far, he's checking off all the boxes for me to buy in on him. Yes, there is risk there. I'm willing to take a shot at round 7. Lastly, Dan, I am not risk averse. I like taking chances. I like gambling, and I like being first to the party, Dan. It's really easy. I get into debates with guys on Twitter that love to tell me, I like Jeff Teague in round 5. Yeah, of course, man. He's been a 5th round value for what? The last 5 years. That's easy to say. I want to be the first. I want to be that guy that took Victor Oladipo in round 4 and he got round and he's a first round value. That's why I'm taking shots on guys like Miles Turner, John Collins, Jared Allen, D'Angelo Russell. I'm hoping these guys all pan out for me, Dan.
Well, Adrian, a big fan of the Major League Baseball ad campaign from the early 2000s, Chicks Dig the Long Ball. He's taking that home run hack, and I am decidedly bunting my man over. No, I'm swinging. I'm trying to hit line drives. I'm just poking it through the infield, getting my guys on base over here. There will be no consensus, ladies and gentlemen. D'Angelo Russell hate still coming from my end. D'Angelo Russell love still coming from about 25 miles south of me in Manhattan Beach. Mr. Benjamins, a pleasure as always, my good man.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you very much, Dan.
Oh, and happy 13th birthday.
Thank you.
I got to keep going lower. I know our boy Ali enjoys the playful ribbing. He's Adrian Benjamins. I am Dan Besbris. Have a wonderful Tuesday, everybody. I am back solo mañana. It's mailbag day, Wednesday here on Fantasy NBA Today. Talk to Neil on Thursday. Adrian, you and Neil wrapping the week up on Friday. Go get the draft guide. You got less than 3 weeks until the B150 gets dropped in, and you'll have your mind blown. Adrian, have a wonderful week, man. Listeners, you'll hear him on Friday. You'll hear me tomorrow. Talk to you then.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.